Everyone. So this is Julius Mark Tabarete, and I'll be discussing to you the overview of the functional grammar, which is the last report in our core subject grammatical structure in English. But before that, along with this video, I'll be sending to you the PDFs, the PowerPoints of this report through your emails and in our GC so that you will have a reference to look at while I am speaking. Also, this video has three videos and it has three parts. So we have to discuss first the introduction to functional grammar, then second is the three metafunctions, and then the third video will be the register and genre. And I'll be posting these ones in the YouTube, particularly with the links provided in the descriptions below. So we have, okay, let's start. We have functional grammar. So it's just an overview. And compared to our past lessons, this discussion is a little bit superficial. It's because we're not really going into the specifics, particularly in the three metafunctions, is because of the time restrictions. So let's proceed. So basically, functional grammar is a grammar that puts together the patterns of the language and the things you can do with them. It is based on the relation between the language or the structure of a language and the various functions that the language performs. So in short, in functional grammar, meaning is equated with function. For every utterance that we articulate, for every expression that we utter, there is a function behind it. It's just that we are unconscious of what we are talking about. But if we're going to assess them and evaluate them with the lenses of functional grammar, we can really say that for everything that we try to utter, it has a function. Why it answers the question, why do we utter this one? Why do we express this one? Why do we communicate with other people? Why do we try to articulate this manner? It has a function in functional grammar. And syntactically speaking, each word positioned in a particular structure has a function. Like, why is it that the tensed verb is preceded by a subject, so on and so forth? It has a function there. For everything that we try to express, whether it's in oral or in written, it has a function in functional grammar. So objectively, we really need to stand back and think broadly what people use for language. So why do we really use language in the first place? Is it because of our own liking? Or probably it's because we have a purpose towards it. We try to communicate with other people. It's because it wants, or we want to fulfill our communication needs, our communicative needs rather. Why do we try to interact with people? Do we have, or do you want to have something? Would we want to have a particular thing, or we want to be heard, want to be influenced, want to persuade, or want to express, etc., etc. Again, we are very unconscious of our purpose, but again, we try to utter it. It's because we really have a purpose. So in functional grammar, we have a pioneering proponent for this one. Perhaps if he is not one of the three proponents, then probably he is the main proponents of functional grammar, and he is Michael Halliday. And I think you are familiar with him. It's because in language, in the introduction to linguistics, he had discussed about the functions of language, particularly the heuristic, the expressive, so on and so forth. So in functional grammar, he had discussed, or he had argued, that there are three kinds of meanings that are particularly relevant. So in short, he has discussed what are the usage of language in general terms. So he had three explanations. So number one, we use language to talk about our experience of the world, including the worlds in our own minds, to describe events and states and the entities involved in them. Also, in this particular explanation by Michael Halliday, in short, we are trying to make sense of the world based on what we can observe. Also, with the use of language, we concretize what we think in our minds, what we have perceived in our minds. We try to concretize and realize them with the use of language. So, in short, language is the medium of really making sense to our surroundings, concretizing what we are perceiving through our eyes, and we try to translate them with the use of language. So, number two is that we also use language to interact with other people, to establish and maintain relations with them, to influence their behavior, to express our own viewpoint on things in the world, and to elicit or change theirs. So aside from really expressing it on our own, we also use language to communicate with other people. We interact with other people. We negotiate what we need from other people. Also, we try to fulfill their communicative needs. So basically, we try to interact with other people. It's because we have a purpose. So we either try to persuade them of our viewpoints, or we try to influence them of what we have perceived in the world. And in return, they also try to influence us of what they perceive in the world. And by with the two-way communication, we have the sender, the message, the receiver, and vice versa. We come up with a negotiated meaning that makes language meaningful. Third is, in using language, we organize our messages in ways that indicate how they fit it with other messages around them and with the wider context in which we are talking or writing. So basically, for everything that we try to utter, it will really make sense if we organize the message to make our messages clear, concise, and even understandable to other people. When we try to interact with them, we try to fit in with the proper context. We try to use the proper language so that we, in return, can gain the proper and appropriate response. And that is why we really need to organize what we speak or what we write, or basically the messages, the content. So, in Halliday and functional grammar, the three categories are used as the basis of how meanings are created and understood. So, it means to say that they allow the matching of particular types of functions and of meanings with particular patterns of wordings to an extent that other categorizations generally do not. So basically, with the proper pattern of wordings or the placement of the wordings, we try to come up with a structure, and that structure, okay, creates now this function. So we try to match words with functions depending on our own purposes. So the idea of matching meanings and wordings is central, for we are concerned with functional grammar. So it is the study of linguistic forms, again, in relation to the meanings that they express, rather than only semantics, the study of meaning. So it means to say that it's not necessary that if we try to match meanings and word, it's automatically semantics. Functional grammar is clearly distinctive in a way that with the meanings and wordings, it has a particular function in the structure of the language, as well as with how it is being said. So, people use wordings in order to carry functions, which is the corpus of functional grammar. So, Michael Halliday has used this term, lexical grammar, to capture his view that lexis, or words, and grammar form a continuum of linguistic resources for the expression of meaning. It means to say that in functional grammar, we have words that have particular grammar. We have words, excuse me, we have words that have functions in the syntax. Furthermore, it can be articulated easily by Peirce 2007. He says that vocabulary and grammatical structures are interdependent. So basically, vocabulary won't really exist without a structure, and structure won't exist without the function or the presence of the vocabulary. So much so that it is possible to say with some justification that words have their own grammar. It means to say that words have their own functions in the syntax. They are placed particularly, it's because they have a function. For example, lexical verbs have patterns. Some verbs can be used with a direct object. I made some oven gloves. So the lexical verb here is the word made, pertaining to what? The direct object is the oven glove. So others need no object at all. The colonel was laughing. So it means to say that lexical grammar in functional grammar, vocabulary or the words have particular functions, particularly the grammatical functions. So also Halliday has discussed this one in 1994, saying that all the categories must be clearly there in the grammar of the language. They are not set up simply to label differences in meaning. In other words, we do not argue these two sets of examples different meaning, therefore they must be systematically distinct in the grammar. So again, Michael Halliday has just discussed or articulated that we don't just put words to label the differences in meaning. It's because this is a noun, this is a verb, this is an adjective. No, they are placed there. It's because they are systematically distinct in the grammar. It has a system, it follows a system, it follows a pattern to convey a successful message with or carrying a particular function. So, question. So, how do we go about relating in a systematic way the functions performed by speakers to the wordings that they choose? In short, um, how do we try to really convey the function based on the wordings that we try to choose? Again, we have the option on how to say it, on how words are being formed, how syntax is presented. So, number one, we can set up a group of meanings relating to what the speaker expects the hearer to do. So, it means to say that the function, it means to say that we have the power to control the words. We have the power to systematize them, to organize them. So, as the speaker, we want to really fulfill the communicative needs of the hearer. That is why we try to set up a group of meanings so that the hearer would want to hear the expectations that he wants, the messages or message that he expects us, the speakers, to speak. For example, are we trying to give information or ask for information? So, we have an example. You are and are you. Okay, so you is basically giving information, while are you rather, is asking for information. So the number two is that I'll go back. Let's go back. So we can match these with sets of lexicogrammatical resources typically used to express the meanings, including the different choices in the ordering of certain elements. So it means to say that again we have the lexicogrammatical resources. For it means to say that you is put there, it's because we want to say it in a declarative form. While our you starts with the R, we want to say it in an interrogative form, depending on the context or what the speaker wants to speak or what is demanded by the hearer. So number two is that another is relating to speaker's assessment of the validity of his or her position. So these meanings are typically expressed by the use of modality resources of the language. For example, may, possibly, etc. And then we have number three, uh, signaling how the message fits in with what else is said around it. So these meanings are expressed. So it means to say that how the message is being fit into the surroundings. Okay, so we have example. So we need to consider how do these words are put in a syntax or put in a structure, and how would the words in a particular position in a particular system in the structure would make a difference. For example number one, she bought the CD on Friday versus did she buy the CD on Friday. So as we can observe in the first sentence, the second utterance, or did she buy, okay, starts with a yes or no question, did, versus in this first articulation, she bought CD on Friday, it starts with the pronoun she. And we can obviously detect this one as a declarative form, and this one is in interrogative form. And we see that with the switch of the finite and the subject, it can create a different sentence mood, as what we have discussed in the first month of our lessons. If we can recall, sentence mood pertains to either it's declarative, interrogative, or imperative. So that's that. So number two is she bought the CD on Friday versus she may have bought the CD on Friday. And this pertains to the number two, which is the usage of the modality. Specifically, it pinpoints to a particular linguistic item, may. So, although there is a difference in the wordings, there will also be a difference in terms of its meaning and its function. Third one is she bought the CD on Friday versus on Friday she bought the CD. It means to say that although there is a particular switch between the prepositional phrase on Friday, it still carries the same meaning. But if we're going to assess this one in terms of the different metafunctions, it will really have a bearing. Why is it placed there? So we have fourth, she bought the CD on Friday versus she loved the CD on Friday. Then the fifth one, she bought the CD on Friday. And then we have Friday saw her but the CD. So it means to say that still the same, that they really have a discrepancy in terms of the meaning. The position of the words would really have, or even the change of the words. For example, excuse me, she bought versus she loved. There is a difference in terms of the meaning. So these are probably the kinds of differences in meaning that spring most easily to mind. Different wordings used to refer to different objects, ideas, states, and events in the world. In other words, we have what we call the propositional content or propositional meaning, and I'll be giving an example of how propositional meanings work. So basically, each of the three types contributes equally to the meaning of the message of the whole, and in return, each three types of the meaning is typically expressed by different aspects of the wording of the clause. And again, this goes back to my reiteration that there are types of meaning in terms of say that we have three meta functions, and with the particular system or the grammar of the words, they carry different meaning. So that's that. So let's go back to this one. So we have the propositional content. So when we say propositional content, that is the substance of the particular utterance. For example, she bought a CD. Did she buy the CD? She may have bought a CD. They all have the same propositional content or the essence of it. It has number one, pronoun she, then the verb buy, and then the object CD. So regardless of the change of the tenses or the change of the syntactical structure, it will carry the same content, the propositional content. And that ends our discussion in the introduction on or in rather in the functional grammar. So for the second video, which is the three meta functions, it will be discussed and it will be articulated in the second link displayed below. Once again, good evening.